Hello, welcome to today's topic on utilizing OneLogin Identity as a Service to enhance your future identity and access management estate. My name is Stuart Sharp, and I'm the VP of Product Strategy for OneLogin at OneIdentity.
And I'm Mark Cobill, and I'm Senior Manager of the Solution Engineering team for OneLogin across EMEA and APJ.
So today we're going to be covering a number of topics. We'll have a brief introduction to IDaaS for those of you who are not that familiar with the concept. We'll highlight the benefits of identity as a service, where OneLogin fits in, and go through a number of deployment examples to help give you a better context of how you can take advantage of OneLogin.
Well, Stuart already mentioned what IDaaS is. It's identity as a service, but what actually is that? Well, when we look at identity as a service, we're subscribing to a highly scalable identity and access management solution. Those services are delivered to us via the cloud, via a cloud platform that we manage. And that can include a range of access management, but also things such as identity governance and privileged access management as well.
Now, IDaaS is often thought of in terms of authentication, but it's much more than just performing authentication for an individual. So a user simply accessing a system requires a lot more behind it. There either needs to be a cloud directory as part of your IDaaS solution, or it needs to integrate with other existing directories, or sometimes both. So that directory and identity system integration, whether those integrations are to on-prem or other cloud services, is a key component and part of the value offer of IDaaS. Now, on what I call the downstream side, so you have the user authenticating to gain legitimate access to the systems, and you need the authentication or what's called federation to the target applications. But you also need to create and control the users, their identities in those downstream apps as well. So that is through provisioning. There are standards like SCIM and REST. And also users might be accessing applications not just via web browsers, but by mobile apps, desktop apps, etc.
One of the things we need to consider is why IDaaS, though. Why do we want to move to a platform that's in the cloud, that's hosted by someone else? Well, it allows us to have a much improved security posture. It can really reduce the risk of data breaches as we're centralizing the identity management and providing strong authentication methods on top of that too. So platforms such as OneLogin can really help organizations to centralize those solutions and make it much easier to manage. But because it's all in one place, we're then reducing the risk because we can see all of those things from that one overarching single pane of glass. An IDaaS solution also allows us to start to accelerate our SaaS deployments rather than having to think about, well, these are the systems we need to spin up. This is the architecture we need to build. These are security controls we need to put in place. We can very simply and easily just connect those cloud-based applications to a platform such as OneLogin and very quickly deploy those services to our end users. Added to that as well, we look after the scalability and resilience. We can scale the platform extremely quickly, and we do that automatically. And of course, we have resilience techniques in the background too that allow us to automatically fail over if we were to have an issue with one of our specific regions. We can also look at our processes as well. Having one environment allows us to really start to streamline those processes we have in place. Rather than to have different processes for different areas, we can put all those on one particular environment and just have to think about one set of rules and settings. That gives us a much better user experience. Users just have to have one set of usernames and passwords, one set of MFA, one URL to have to remember because they're accessing everything from one particular environment. And that also starts to drive cost savings as well. If we look at the number of people that are having to manage those environments, we could actually look to reduce the number of admins we've got, but also the number of licenses we require for different systems. We might be able to consolidate everything into one place. And Stuart, have you got anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment when you talked about the better user experience. I met someone the other day, just in a social setting, who, when they heard that I work for One Identity and One Login, said, "Oh, we use One Login at our organization." And she went on to say how it just transformed and streamlined her everyday work experience, because all of a sudden they had that one centralized place to both find their applications and to very easily and seamlessly log in. So sometimes the simple things in life can have the biggest impact.
Absolutely.
Now, in terms of, let's just look at what does One Login offer today. So we mentioned authentication. An extension of that is to provide that single sign-on experience. So you're authenticating into the One Login portal, and users can automatically be authenticated into the target apps without them having to do anything, unless you want to add step-up MFA challenges when accessing certain applications in certain contexts. So multi-factor authentication is an important benefit that an IDaaS can offer, and provide it in a very easily deployed, easily managed way. Now, adaptive risk-based authentication is becoming increasingly important, because simply having a one or two strong authentication factors is nowadays isn't enough. You have to use what we call advanced authentication, where you're making sure that you have the full context of an authentication attempt and you understand the risks involved with that particular access request. Cloud Directory services provide a lot of economies and just streamlined administration and automation, and providing interfaces with legacy systems, protocols like LDAP and Radius can again reduce your infrastructure and help you to cover a broad range of use cases. Reporting and analytics are obviously key, and what you'd expect with any enterprise service. And also, One Login is a gateway into identity governance and access and privileged access management. Very important launchpad and gatekeeper to control who has access to what. So that launching into governance and PAM is one thing, but then there are also deeper integrations with governance and privileged access solutions, particularly One Identities, that can add additional value and insights and increase your automation while improving your security.
So One Login is a great fit for One Identity customers today who are already using IGA and PAM platforms as well as active roles. We can very easily integrate what already exists today and give great additional user flows, as well as really starting to increase the security posture. It's also great for those that are new to Identity as a Service. Maybe you're seeking to replace current IDaaS solutions, or having particular cloud transformation projects that you're working on where you need a very quick solution to deploy to get those up and ready to go. It may also be that you've got a specific project where you need additional strong feature set or something separate for a certain use case, for example, B2B. Something like One Login, the One Login platform allows us to start to really set things up very, very quickly, but also give users a great experience.
Now, one characteristic of Identity as a Service is that it's very easy to deploy, and it's the fact that it can it doesn't take months or even weeks to deploy, but you can deploy it in minutes and hours, allows you to think outside the box and take a new approach at where you want to leverage it to your advantage. So you can start thinking about if you have a new specific application that maybe has a different user community or has different authentication requirements than your existing systems, you can start to think about applying it even just for a particular business unit or a specific use case. Also, you may want to have some logical separation, such as an independently run company within a conglomerate, where you want to be able to easily integrate with existing identity systems like Active Directory or other cloud directories, etc. But you want to give them the a certain degree of autonomy for managing the environment, or maybe there are regulatory requirements where you want to separate out the user data or make sure, say, it's in the EU versus in the US. And also, you just might want it for ease of administration and keeping the certain set of users or community of users separate from another one. A very standard use case for that is if you're going to leverage IDaaS for your customers and for your workforce, you tend, particularly if you're mid-size or larger organization, you'll tend to have two separate IDaaS tenants to do that. Not that you can't do it in one, but doing it in two separate ones sometimes helps for auditing and regulatory purposes.
We've spoken a lot about the foundations here, but what does that actually look like when it comes to deployment itself? And we've got a couple of examples here that we're going to go through. The first is around cloud migration. So how do we get our existing applications and environments across into something much more cloud-based? Well, of course, OneLogin sits in the middle here. We have the OneLogin Cloud Directory that provides us with those directory services, and we can very easily use those user identities that already exist on premise to allow our users to sign into the OneLogin platform. Our Active Directory connector allows us to synchronize those users into OneLogin, but also utilize their existing passwords as we can call back to AD. We can also choose to capture those passwords, so if in the future we wanted to turn off our Active Directory, we could very easily do that. And of course, the end goal here is to give our end users access to their applications. And we can see on the right-hand side of the screen all the different types of applications that we would generally see our users accessing. Of course, it's not just employees. It might also be that we're allowing our contractors, our partners, and our customers to access our end applications too. And of course, as Stuart mentioned, we could have specific environments for each of those, or you could bring them all together in one overarching environment.
Now, when it comes to lifecycle management, OneLogin offers you a number of choices. So obviously you can administrators can manually create users, but you can also delegate that to managers. They may create or keep their own employee or own teams up to date. And you can even delegate that to contractors or to partners where you may want them to manage their own teams within your OneLogin tenant. But the more common use case is that the majority of identities are synchronized from external directory sources like AD, LDAP, Google, Azure AD, or Entra ID as it's now called. Now, OneLogin can then take those users and their attributes and allocate the right access to the right sets of applications and provision those users to those downstream apps. So you can plug OneLogin into your existing identity and access management state and achieve a high degree of end-to-end automation.
Of course, this is just a couple of use cases. There are many that we could cover here, and there's a few more here that we want to call out. The first is mergers and acquisitions, when we're looking to very quickly bring new environments into an existing, say, OneLogin environment. So we can very quickly connect an existing directory into OneLogin and give users access to those end applications. It may also be that we have multi-tiered organizations where we need control between those layers. And we can do that with things such as our delegated administration tooling, as well as having multiple tenants and using trusted IDP between tenants to give tenant-to-tenant federation. Our MSP environments allow our MSP users to be able to manage other tenants. So rather than having to sign into different environments and look up in each of those manually which particular licensing is connected to which particular tenant and how many users they have, they can see that in an overarching console. Stuart, would you like to cover the last couple here?
Yeah, certainly. So another interesting use case is with application vendors themselves, where you might, if you're an application vendor, you might want to have an enhanced offering to your customer base to bring additional value add. Some of our customers who use OneLogin, for example, who provide HR services, want to offer their customers that out-of-the-box integration between their HR system that automatically synchronizing users to OneLogin and then down to the downstream applications. And they see providing that end-to-end offering brings value to their customers. Then the other very big use case, particularly in the last few years, is online customers. How you provide streamlined, modern, self-service user experience to your customer bases in a way that doesn't require you to own and maintain and keep updating the logic and supporting the latest authentication options like passkeys. With OneLogin, where you leverage our IDaaS system, we take care of all that for you. You can choose to turn it on, to enable it, to offer it, give users a choice, even a range of options, so they can choose the experience that they want. Now, when it comes to user communities, OneLogin supports all user communities. IDaaS was traditionally associated with workforce, but we've constructed and architected OneLogin so that it doesn't matter what type of user it is. We have the same range of tools and functionality that you can offer across the board, whether it's B2B, workforce, customers, etc. Now, the first option I want to talk about is either the B2B or you can also the extended workforce. So when I say extended workforce, I'm talking about non-office workers. The important distinction between office workers and external partners, contractors or extended workforce, is that with your office workers, you control what hardware they have. As an organization, you supply them with their computers. You often even supply them with their phones, which could be crucial in terms of what type of device-based MFA factors they support, etc. But if you're suddenly migrating your HR and payroll systems and timekeeping systems, say, to the cloud for employees to check their payroll, once a month, you don't have control over what systems or even what kind of phones they're using as part of the authentication and access experience. So you need to have a range of flexible authentication and self-service options to support that community. Likewise with B2B partners as well. You want to be able to support the requirements of your business partners and not dictate or limit who you can do business with based on technical constraints on your side.
The same is very true when we look at SIAM as well. Our end customers themselves come from many different sources, not just our traditional directories. Maybe that they've got their own identities they want to sign into the platform with, and that could be a social login. It could be a login that sits somewhere else. And we need to be very, very flexible when we're allowing users access into our platform, because of course the main goal is that they repeat coming back. If they don't come back, we don't sell our services again. So we want to make sure that the experience we're providing is a great experience. The end goal is to give them access to our end applications, but we can start putting a lot more in the middle as well, and that can be performed using integrations. OneLogin has a rich set of REST APIs that Stuart mentioned earlier, and that allows us to start to build things such as custom UIs on top, so we can really start to give our end users a great experience whilst delivering fantastic services on top too.
Yeah, and I just add to that, Mark, that one of the really key aspects when you're dealing with customers is self-service. Now, when it comes to business and workforce, it's equally important, partly because you don't, as an organization, you don't want the cost of paying for IT help desk tickets. Who does? But also think about the end user. It's the friction for the end user. Your employees or your partners, if they can't log in, if they can't access an application, then they can't be productive. Now, for customers, it's even more critical. There's such a focus on, is this user going to abandon their shopping cart and not complete the payment process because of some friction in the authentication and payment process. So it's really important that if they've forgotten their password, you provide them a really easy way that they're used to reset their password, to send an email or send a text without any additional friction. They can solve it instantly and then carry on with checking out their shopping cart, for example. So self-service is great from an efficiency and productivity point of view for the workforce and the business. It's doubly critical when it comes to interacting with your customers online.
So we've been through a lot when it comes to IDaaS, explaining the main foundations and some key use cases. But Stuart, what does this look like in the future? Where are we going to go? And what are your thoughts around what this actually looks like?
Well, I'd say it's a bit of quirk of history that the term IDaaS, the concept, originally was associated with access management. It's simply because OneLogin was one of the very first IDaaS platforms out there, more than 13 years ago now. And OneLogin was built to take advantage of the SAML standard as a federation for ease of integrating with SaaS and accessing SaaS applications. So it got stuck with that access management label, but it's so much more. We showed you that it is full lifecycle management. And there are aspects of privileged access management that have always been there, and OneLogin has a cloud directory as a core component of its IDaaS platform and architecture. So therefore, it has elements of directory management. What you're going to see is the maturing of IDaaS from a access management focus to identity as a service. What it actually says, it will cover all aspects of identity and access management. So supporting rich governance features and very user-friendly and efficient means of privileged access management. So I think you will see quite a few exciting developments in the very near future.
Thank you, Stuart. Well, thank you very much for your time today. We hope that you all found this useful. And if there's anything that you have question-wise, please do feel to get in contact with our teams.
Bye. Thank you.